property! This is an outrage!
They tried to snatch my $10 million property because I'd only paid a quarter for it, and they figured I wouldn't have the brains or guts to push back. Just listen to this nonsense. I'm a divorced plumber who legitimately bought a rundown abandoned lakefront cabin at a tax auction. Price tag, 25 cents. That's all. Fast forward a year, after pouring sweat and muscle into restoring that Colorado mountain cabin with my own 2 hands, an HOA tyrant named Delilah Thornfield rolls up in her shiny luxury SUV, acting like I didn't own a thing. The scent of fresh-cut pine from my morning of sawing still hung in the air when she strutted out, designer boots crunching my gravel. Driveway, waving legal documents like she'd just conquered new land. "This property belongs to the HOA now," she declared, lips curled into a practiced, condescending smile. That little quarter I spent, it had ballooned into a property worth $10 million, and this woman really thought she could just waltz in and take it. So let me ask you, what would you do if someone tried to steal your rightful property with fine print and intimidation? Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I want to see how far this story goes. But first, let me rewind and explain how a broke plumber ended up owning paradise, and how one vengeful HOA queen nearly ripped it away. 6 months earlier, I was Marcus Caney, 52 years old, stuck in a dingy Denver apartment that reeked of microwave dinners and dead dreams. I'd just gone through a divorce. My ex, Jennifer, took half my savings, half my tools, and what felt like half my will to live. At least she left me my old pickup, probably because it reeked of joint compound and had more rust than paint. To distract myself, I started spending weekends at tax auctions, hunting fixer-uppers. Most people think those auctions are dull. They're not. There's a crackling tension in those stale courthouse rooms, the squeak of benches under nervous bidders, auctioneers barking lot numbers like carnival callers, the metallic tang of anxiety heavy in recycled air. My dad, a carpenter, always taught me to spot potential where others saw junk. That morning, flipping through the listings, one entry jumped off the page. Whispering Pines Cabin, 15 acres, lakefront. Starting bid, 25 cents. The photo looked like a crime scene. Rotted roof, shattered glass. But lakefront in Colorado? That's pure gold. A couple of hours later, I'm rumbling up Highway 285 when the lake appears, sparkling like a postcard. The cabin sat right on the shoreline, Rocky Mountain peaks mirrored in the water. Hand-hewn logs from the 60s, a foundation, straight as my level. Sure, it needed everything. Plumbing, wiring, maybe divine intervention, but the bones were good. That's when a spotless white Escalade purred up. Out steps Delilah Thornfield, silver hair lacquered into place, designer hiking boots that probably cost more than my month's groceries. Clipboard in hand like she was delivering commandments from on high. "Excuse me," she announced with the tone of a PTA dictator. "I'm Delilah Thornfield, president of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association." I held up my tax deed. "Marcus Caney, new owner." Her smile frosted over. "Oh, honey, tax sales are cute, but they don't override our covenants." She hefted a brick-sized manual. "This structure violates 17 community rules. It will have to be demolished." I told her the cabin predated any HOA by 40 years, legally grandfathered. She smirked, that rich lady smirk, the kind people use when explaining something too complicated for the help. "We forced out 12 other non-compliant properties. Our attorney wins every time." My stomach sank. This woman was on. My land, acting like I was some backwoods idiot who barely knew how to read. "Lady, I bought this fair and square. I'm restoring it." Her smile stayed, but now there was something sharp underneath. "Mr. Caney, you clearly don't understand how things work here. Whispering Pines is an exclusive community. We have standards." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "People like you usually find it easier to walk away. People like me." There it was. Blue-collar plumber, no college degree, not good. Enough for her mountain kingdom. "I'll give you 72 hours to reconsider," she said, climbing back into her SUV. "After that, you'll learn just how effectively we protect our community." As her Escalade disappeared in a cloud of dust, I gripped my 25-cent deed. A hawk screeched overhead, and even the mountains felt like they were holding their breath. Dad always said bullies only respect one thing: when you stand your ground. Problem was, this bully came armed with lawyers, money, and years of experience, crushing people just like me. Week 1 of restoring the cabin turned into a crash course in petty harassment. And let me tell you, Delilah Thornfield had a PhD in making life miserable. First Monday morning, while I was hauling debris, an official-looking truck rolled up. Out stepped Bryce Thornfield. Same last name, no coincidence. A soft-bodied 20-something. In a reflective vest, eyes glazed like a mall cop who peaked in high school. Kid looked like opening a pickle jar would be a struggle, yet here he was, the HOA's compliance officer. "You're parked incorrectly," he announced, scribbling in his citation book like Hemingway drafting a novel. "Vehicles must be parallel to the property line, not perpendicular." I stared at my own truck, parked in my own damn driveway. "You serious right now?" $500 fine, he replied, tearing off the ticket with a grin of pure satisfaction. On Tuesday, I got slapped with a citation for unauthorized construction noise because I dared to run a circular saw at 9 a.m. by Wednesday. It was improper waste storage. Apparently, keeping debris bins in a construction zone was a crime. Thursday, landscaping violations. Why? Because I hadn't planted petunias around a foundation that was still halfway rebuilt. The absurdity was staggering. Every single ticket carried a $500 fine with the threat of property liens if unpaid. Delilah's tactic was obvious: bleed me dry with endless petty citations until I caved. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. But here's what she didn't count. Plumbers are trained to solve problems creatively, and I'd spent years tangling with code enforcement bureaucrats. That weekend, I headed to the county records office, a dingy basement that reeked of mildew and inefficiency. 3 hours of digging through dusty file cabinets uncovered a gem. Whispering Pines. HOA had only been established 8 years ago. My cabin? Built in 1962. I remembered something my dad once mentioned from his construction days. Old buildings sometimes get legal protection from new rules. Lawyers call it pre-existing non-conforming use. In simple terms, if your property existed before, the regulations you're grandfathered in. Just like you can't be forced retroactively to obey seatbelt laws if you were born before they existed. Monday morning, I walked into Caldwell and Associates, a strip mall law office crammed between a nail salon and a vape shop. The waiting room chairs looked like survivors of the 1980s, and the coffee tasted like regret, but their paralegal, Zoe Jamie, had razor-sharp eyes and enough student debt to fuel determination. "This is fascinating," she said, scanning my papers. "HOAs have very limited power over properties that predate them. Your cabin has strong legal protections. Together, we filed a motion challenging their authority. Suddenly, every one of Delilah's tickets became worthless scraps of paper, but I wasn't only fighting in court. That night, I launched Cabin Restoration Chronicles on social media. The first post, a time-lapse of clearing debris, set to classic rock. Decades of neglect vanished, exposing the cabin's hidden potential. Watching it felt like archaeology. In reverse. The comments poured in. "This place is going to be gorgeous. Stick it to the HOA. Team Marcus from Canada. Pete Rodriguez, who ran the local hardware store, started giving me discounts after watching. That woman's terrorized folks around here for years," he muttered while loading lumber. "About time someone stood up to her." The neighborhood's response split right down the middle. Some quietly slipped supportive notes under my windshield. Others suddenly became fascinated with their flower beds whenever I waved. Fear of Delilah ran deep. Then came Wednesday evening. A note tucked under my truck's wiper. "She's done this before. Check the Kellerman property on Maple Ridge Road." Thursday, I drove 20 minutes to a modest subdivision. The address led to a vacant lot, a cracked foundation choked by weeds, a weathered "for sale" sign that looked older than I was. Whatever had happened to the Kellermans, It wasn't good. Friday, my first viral hit, footage of me pressure washing. The cabin's exterior, decades of grime peeled away, revealing stunning craftsmanship beneath. Within 6 hours, 50,000 views. DIY channels across the country were sharing it. That evening, I stood on the restored porch. The mountains glowed amber in the setting sun, loons coiled across the water, and the air was thick with the smell of pine sap and sawdust. Day 7 update, I told the camera. Delilah thinks fines and paperwork will break me, but each citation just proves I'm on the right track. This cabin isn't just being repaired, it's being reborn. What I didn't realize was that Delilah was watching those videos too, and my growing online audience was making her furious. Week 2, Monday morning. I was wiring new outlets. When the crunch of gravel signaled trouble, County Inspector Harold Fleming climbed out of his truck looking like a man who'd rather be anywhere else. "Work stop order," he muttered, slapping a bright orange sticker on my door like a ticket. From hell. "All electrical work requires permits you never applied for." I stared at him. "I filed those applications 3 weeks ago." He checked his tablet with all the enthusiasm of a man reading his own autopsy. "No record. $10,000 fines daily until compliance. 10 grand a day for work I was legally certified to do on property I legally owned. It felt like being fined for breathing without a permit." That afternoon, I marched to the county office. Clerk Janet pecked at her keyboard like a sedated sloth. 20 minutes later, she found my paperwork misfiled in some miscellaneous folder. "That's odd," she mumbled, adjusting glasses thick enough to track satellites. "These keep getting misplaced. About as odd as Fleming golfing every Thursday with, guess who, Delilah, at Pine Ridge Country Club, something I'd discovered thanks to their cheerful member spotlight posts online. Nothing screams conflict. Of interest quite like an inspector golfing with the HOA president who's trying to crush you." Meanwhile, the Kellerman clue started to unravel. I tracked down Robert Kellerman at a tackle shop in Durango. He looked like a veteran of suburban warfare, weary eyes scanning fishing lures. "Delilah Thornfield," he spat, his laugh sharp with bitterness. "That woman's a vulture. She harassed us for 2 straight years. Fines, citations, bogus. Permits. It was surgical, non-stop pressure until we had to sell. And here's the kicker. Her husband owned Thornfield Construction, the same company that mysteriously scooped up distressed homes at bargain prices. My uncle once told me, I said, when someone's trying to force you out, always ask, who profits from your misery?" Robert nodded grimly. "We had a beautiful craftsman bungalow, had to sell for $60,000 just to cover legal fees. 6 months later, Thornfield flipped it for $300,000. Back at my cabin, Zoe examined Fleming's work stop order like she was hunting for hidden signatures. "This inspector never disclosed his ties to the HOA," she said. "That's textbook conflict of interest." We filed an ethics complaint faster than you could say community standards. Within 48 hours, Fleming's order was suspended pending investigation. Turns out golf buddies don't hold up well. In legal crossfire. Meanwhile, my online following exploded. The electrical installation videos hit a nerve with DIY enthusiasts. I'd explained simple wiring as I went, and electricians chimed in with their own horror stories about permits. Day 14 update, I told the camera from my half-finished kitchen. Evening sun streamed through brand-new windows, sawdust specks, drifting like fireflies. They're trying to stall progress with red tape. But look at this. I demonstrated the new breaker panel, explaining how modern circuits prevent fires. The video went nuclear. 200,000 views in a single day. My follower count finally crossed the 6-figure mark. That's when Pete from the hardware store introduced me to Harold Whitmore, a retired judge with eyes like scalpels and coffee that actually tasted like coffee, not watered-down regret. Harold combed through my paperwork with surgical care. "Procedural mistakes everywhere," he muttered, adjusting his glasses. "This inspector's work is shamefully careless. And this HOA harassment? Textbook property manipulation." He shook his head, disgusted. Right then, Harold offered free legal help. Within minutes, he'd already spotted enough violations to sink Delilah's campaign. But the real turning point came when Sarah Martinez, a local reporter, reached out. "I've been following your restoration videos," she said, voice sharp with that restless curiosity good journalists live on. "Would you mind answering a few questions?" Half an hour later, Sarah had gathered enough material for a 3-part exposé on Delilah's schemes. Turns out plenty of homeowners had complained for years, but no one had kept detailed records until my daily videos started documenting everything. That weekend, I launched a GoFundMe titled "Help Save the 25 Cabin." Donations poured in almost instantly from people who had been following the project. By week's end, we'd raised $25,000, enough to face Delilah's legal games without living on instant noodles for the next decade. By Sunday evening, I sat on my brand new front steps, watching the sunset wash the mountains in shades of purple and gold. Loons called across the water, waves lapped gently at the dock, and the pine-scented air carried the calm I'd been craving. But as I refreshed the donation totals, headlights cut across my driveway. Delilah's Escalade rolled in, her fury radiating even through the dusk. Round 3 was about to turn vicious. She didn't just step out of her SUV, she erupted, a designer-draped volcano mid-eruption, clutching a manila envelope thick as a brick. Even her luxury perfume couldn't hide the reek of desperation. "Mr. Kane," she declared with soap opera theatrics, "you're being served for fraud." She shoved the envelope toward me like it was toxic waste. Inside was a formal complaint, accusing me of obtaining the cabin under false pretenses, alleging I'd known about HOA restrictions and deliberately misled the court. The legal jargon was so dense it might as well have been encrypted. "Criminal investigation begins Monday," she sneered, a predatory smile stretching across her Botox-tightened face. "Fraud carries prison time, asset forfeiture. Everything you've built, gone." Tuesday morning, Sheriff Rodriguez showed up, a decent guy who looked like he'd rather wrestle gators than serve legal papers. And just like that, Marcus Caney was officially under criminal investigation for property fraud, a charge that carried up to 20 years in federal prison. The media storm hit faster than a flipped switch. Anonymous tips flooded stations with stories painting me as a cabin con man who'd hustled his way into prime land. My restoration videos, once filled with encouragement, turned toxic with accusations and demands for a confession. Delilah's smear campaign went nuclear. Glossy professional flyers plastered town, portraying me as an outsider criminal invading their peaceful community. The quality screamed big money backing, strange for something billed as grassroots outrage. Online, fake reviews flooded. "My plumbing business. Marcus Caney is a fraud. Don't trust this criminal." Cancelled jobs rolled in as customers saw the headlines. 20 years of reputation wiped out in 2 days. The attacks got personal when someone dug up my ex-wife, Jennifer, hounding her for dirt on my criminal past. She called me in tears, panicked by reporters asking if I'd committed fraud during our marriage. "Marcus, what's going on?" she cried through static on the line. "They're saying you stole a cabin." Donations dried up. My GoFundMe cratered. That's the internet for you. One day you're the underdog fighting giants, the next you're the villain in a black hat. But while Delilah shredded my reputation, Harold Whitmore was dismantling her legal foundation. By Wednesday he uncovered a gem. "Absolutely fascinating," he said, spreading documents across his desk like a chef laying out ingredients. Delilah never filed the HOA's incorporation papers with the state. Legally, the Whispering Pines HOA doesn't even exist. My grandfather, a union man, used to warn my dad about fake authority, people who acted powerful without any legal right. Lawyers had a term for it too, ultra vires, which basically means you're full of it and have no authority. Without proper incorporation, Delilah's HOA couldn't enforce rules, levy fines, or file lawsuits. Every citation she'd issued was worthless scrap paper, and it got better. County records revealed her father, the original surveyor, had mapped the neighborhood back in the 80s. Historical surveys proved my cabin was specifically excluded from the HOA boundaries, recognized as an older lakefront parcel. Delilah had always known her phantom HOA had no claim. She'd just been banking on intimidation to break me before I uncovered the truth. By Friday, the tide turned. The county DA dismissed the fraud case outright. No evidence supported criminal charges. Everything was thrown out with prejudice. Harold's documentation proved my cabin purchase was 100% legal, airtight, but the biggest shift came online. My following exploded past 500,000. The hashtag #DykesCabinJustice went viral as people rallied behind the little guy standing up. To corrupt authority, local businesses joined in, hardware store, coffee shop, gas station, all putting up signs, "We support Marcus." Regular folks were done watching Delilah bully neighbors with fake power. County officials quietly revealed they were launching a full review of every HOA permit and citation filed over the past 10 years. Soon, more victims of harassment stepped forward with chilling accounts of their own, creating a tidal wave of testimony that crushed Delilah's credibility beneath mountains of documented abuse. That same weekend, a certified appraiser spent 2 hours measuring, photographing, and comparing local sales. His verdict struck like a bolt of lightning. My fully restored lakefront property carried a market value of $2.8 million from 25 cents to $2.8 million in just 4 months. Not too shabby for a divorced plumber chasing a dream. By Sunday evening, I stood on my dock as the sunset lit the mountains in gold and crimson. The glass-still lake mirrored every peak with flawless clarity. Cool mountain air, scented with pine and smoke from far-off cabins, wrapped around me while an owl's mournful call drifted across the water. My phone buzzed. Sarah Martinez. Big. Story drops tomorrow. You'll want to see this. Delilah's empire of lies was ready to implode, and I had front-row seats to the collapse. Monday morning brought the discovery that changed everything. I was cleaning the cabin's basement, a damp, musty vault reeking of forgotten memories and rodent parties. When my crowbar struck something metallic behind a loose panel, I pried it open to find a rusted box wedged inside the wall cavity, sealed tighter than my ex-wife's boyfriend's wallet. Inside, wrapped in brittle yellowed plastic that crackled like ancient scrolls, lay the original 1962 deed, hand-drawn survey maps, and a folder stamped Mineral Rights Assessment. My hands shook as I opened it. A geological survey from the 1980s valued rare earth deposits beneath my land at $8–12 million. Lithium, copper, even traces of gold. The essential trinity of tech industry resources. The stale smell of paper mixed with my nervous sweat as I read numbers that made my head reel. Suddenly, everything clicked into perfect clarity. When I spread the documents across Harold Whitmore's desk, his coffee mug froze mid-air. Good Lord, Marcus, this changes the game entirely. Mineral. Rights passed with your tax deed. You own everything below this land. I remembered my uncle's old mining tales, how in America buying land often meant you owned it from the earth's core to the sky above, unless specifically excluded. Surface, subsurface, the whole geological sandwich. That afternoon, Sarah Martinez's investigative exposé detonated across the local airwaves. Her 3-part series ripped the mask off Delilah's operation. Turns out her husband's construction firm had gone bankrupt just 6 months earlier, drowning in $2.3 million of debt. They were desperate for cash. And the kicker? Delilah had known about the mineral deposits the whole time. Her father's surveying files contained copies of the geological study, sitting untouched in some dusty cabinet for decades. Her harassment campaign had never been about HOA bylaws or neighborhood standards. It was pure, calculated greed, dressed up as suburban decency. She's been holding this intel for years, Sarah told me during our taped interview, her voice trembling with excitement. She waited for the perfect chance to force a sale and grab those mineral rights herself. The legal weight of that revelation was crushing. My 25-cent tax sale included full mineral extraction rights, worth potentially 10 times the land's surface value. Delilah's systematic harassment, now edged into criminal conspiracy and potential federal racketeering charges. Harold put it simply, she tried to swindle you out of a winning lottery ticket by making you think it was a worthless scratch-off. That evening, sitting on my dock as the mountains glowed amber in the fading sun, I faced the biggest decision of my life. A mining company had already called, dangling an $8 million cash offer for immediate extraction rights. That money could wipe out financial struggles for 3 generations of my family. I could sell, walk away rich beyond imagination, and let others carve this pristine wilderness into an industrial wasteland. Or I could choose another path. The lake reflected jagged peaks like a mirror, while pine-scented air carried the haunting. Calls of loons. This place had healing power. I'd felt it every day during the restoration, as stress melted with each beam I repaired and every board I sanded smooth. That night, I shocked even myself with my decision. Instead of selling out to mining, I announced plans for a limited, eco-friendly extraction program that would fund a public conservation park. 90% of the land would remain permanently protected, with eco-cabins to generate steady tourism revenue for the community. The response was explosive. Social media lit up with praise from people sick of seeing natural beauty destroyed. For quick cash, environmental groups hailed the plan. Tourism boards projected more than 100,000 annual visitors, pumping millions into the local economy. But the true shift was deeper. I was no longer a broke plumber fighting an HOA. I was the steward of a $10 million resource, choosing community over greed. Delilah had tried to rob Fort Knox, and the vault had slammed shut on her hands. By Tuesday morning, Harold Whitmore's law office had transformed into a battle command center, smelling of coffee and determination. Maps spread across every surface, legal briefs stacked like ammunition, and a team of volunteers that looked ready to join. The Avengers? Harold spearheaded strategy with surgical precision and the glee of a child on Christmas morning. "We're filing a civil RICO lawsuit," he declared, adjusting his glasses. "Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, built to take down organized crime." Sarah documented every detail for her growing investigative series, camera rolling, as Harold explained how Delilah's pattern of property targeting qualified as racketeering. In plain terms, she had been running a criminal enterprise under the disguise of community leadership. My father used to tell me stories about union organizers in the 1970s, men and women who meticulously recorded every violation a company committed, stacking evidence piece by piece until the entire rotten system toppled. The same approach applied here. For years, we had collected proof of Delilah's relentless harassment, fraud, and extortion aimed at vulnerable property owners. That's when environmental attorney Rebecca Torres stepped in, offering her expertise pro bono. Specializing in conservation easements and sustainable development, she carried herself with the calm ferocity of a hostage negotiator. Silver streaks ran through her hair, a testament to decades of battles fought and won. She'd already helped secure protected land across 3 states. "Limited mineral extraction can finance conservation forever," Rebecca explained, laying out geological survey maps across Harold's conference table. "We create a trust, harvest no more than 5% of deposits, and lock away the rest for permanent protection." Meanwhile, local contractor Miguel Santos rallied volunteer construction crews like a commander gathering troops. Word spread quickly among the trades. Plumbers, electricians, and carpenters, all donating weekends to build the park's infrastructure. It became a brotherhood of calloused hands, united in defense of one of their own. Our legal plan was deceptively simple. By invoking RICO, we could pursue treble damages, 3 times the actual losses, amounting to as much as $30 million in penalties for Delilah's schemes. Harold had already referred her crimes to the FBI, citing mail fraud and extortion. The financial side, my accountant, Lisa Jaime, brought quiet brilliance to the project. Soft-spoken and precise, she could turn spreadsheets into something close to music. She structured the nonprofit foundation, the 25C Conservation Trust. Its mission was clear: manage sustainable mineral extraction, fund the park, and teach communities about property rights and self-defense under the law. "The economic impact is staggering," Lisa said, scrolling through her models. 50 permanent jobs, $5 million a year in tourism, plus an endowment to protect this land forever. What followed was nothing short of a grassroots renaissance. Each weekend, scores of volunteers arrived. Retired contractors shared wisdom with eager apprentices, while families brought lunches and stayed to help. Across the lake, the rhythm of hammers blended with bursts of laughter. What began as my modest cabin restoration turned into a community-wide celebration. Local businesses pitched in too, selling materials at cost. The project felt like an old-fashioned barn raising. Pete Rodriguez's hardware store became our unofficial headquarters, its bulletin board plastered with schedules, photos, and updates. Meanwhile, Sarah uncovered evidence of 12 other families. Delilah had terrorized through the same tactics. Many had lost their homes. In response, we created a victim support fund to provide legal aid for anyone seeking restitution from her past abuses. My social media following exploded, reaching 1.2 million. The world was tuning in to watch this David and Goliath battle unfold in real time. Every day we shared progress updates mixed with educational content, how property rights work, what HOAs can and cannot enforce, and warning signs of coordinated harassment. Inside the cabin, the new educational center began to take shape. Interactive exhibits would teach visitors about mineral rights, conservation easements, and standing up to legal intimidation. Free online courses broke down Property Rights 101, complete with downloadable templates for common disputes. Rebecca expanded the vision further, forging partnerships with 3 universities to use the preserve as a living research hub for sustainable extraction and habitat restoration. By then, media attention had exploded. National networks requested interviews. Filmmakers secured documentary rights. What started as a personal fight became a national symbol of ordinary people pushing back against corruption. But the sweetest victory was watching Delilah's empire unravel in plain view. County officials launched full investigations into HOA activity spanning the last decade. Other victims stepped forward with lawsuits. Her shadow organization, devoid of legal legitimacy, was exposed, making every citation, fine, and threat prosecutable as fraud. One Friday evening, I stood inside the nearly finished visitor center. Golden sunlight poured through spotless windows, warming the polished hardwood floors. The air was thick with the scent of fresh paint, pine drifting in through open doors. Miguel appeared in the doorway, hard hat pushed back, a wide smile etched across his weathered face. "Marcus, we're ahead of schedule. The park opens next weekend." Outside, volunteers installed trail markers while families strolled the new boardwalk over Lake Serenity. Children's laughter mingled with the haunting call of loons as the sunset bathed the mountains in purple and gold. The 25-cent cabin had transformed into something far greater, a symbol of what happens when ordinary people refuse to bow to bullies. But before the celebration, one task remained: finishing off the bully herself. Delilah's panic was palpable now, her carefully built empire collapsing faster than a sandcastle in a storm. If she couldn't win my land through legal loopholes, she'd resort to destruction, like a spoiled child breaking toys she couldn't keep. By Tuesday morning, the air carried both diesel fumes and the bitter scent of betrayal. When I reached the construction site, the sight stopped me cold. Equipment wrecked with expert precision, sugar poured into fuel tanks, tires slashed, hydraulic lines sliced as neatly as a surgeon's cut. Machinery worth thousands stood useless in the sharp mountain air. Miguel Santos looked over the wreckage with the grim composure of an EMT at a fatal accident. "This isn't random kids fooling around," he muttered, pointing at the cleanly cut hoses. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. The anonymous warnings had already escalated. No longer passive-aggressive scribbles, but outright threats. One note tucked under my windshield read, "Accidents happen on job sites. Smart people know when to quit before it's too late." But the cameras we installed after the first wave of harassment gave us pure gold. There he was, Bryce Thornfield, Delilah's pudgy nephew, skulking around at 2 a.m., trying to play burglar but glowing like a lighthouse in the infrared footage. His reflective vest made him about as stealthy as a marching band in a library, while he sabotaged equipment. The campaign of intimidation spread quickly like a contagion. Pete Rodriguez arrived one morning to find his hardware store windows scrawled with soap-written filth that would make a sailor blush. Miguel's truck got keyed in the grocery store lot, deep scratches spelling "go home" in uneven letters. Elderly volunteers began receiving late-night phone calls, heavy breathing, and vague threats meant to scare people who'd never dealt with real bullies. My insurance company bailed instantly, dropping coverage with the speed of a prom date hit. With food poisoning. Their excuse? Terrorism risk. Apparently, property insurance doesn't cover suburban warlords on a rampage. But while Delilah busied herself with amateur terror tactics, My private investigator was busy dismantling her. Life on paper. Jerry Kowalski, a rumpled ex-cop who ran on gas station coffee and grit, had been digging through public records with relentless focus. "Your HOA queen is bleeding out financially," Jerry said, spreading papers across my kitchen table like a coroner revealing evidence. The stale smell of old documents mingled with coffee as he walked me through her empire of debt. Her husband owed $2.3 million to creditors, foreclosure proceedings hidden from HOA members. She'd been siphoning association funds to cover legal bills, robbing Peter to sue Paul, as my grandmother would have said. The delicious irony was clear. Her harassment campaign was costing more than she could afford. Attorneys, consultants, even hired saboteurs. She was hemorrhaging cash like an artery torn wide open. Jerry's findings revealed her endgame, a systematic shakedown of vulnerable homeowners, with my cabin as her golden parachute out of bankruptcy. My 25-cent purchase had accidentally wrecked her retirement con. Meanwhile, FBI agent Rebecca Foster had taken a sharp interest in our growing pile of evidence. She was a woman who missed nothing, her words measured, her gaze razor-sharp. She spent 3 hours in my kitchen recording every detail. Crimes like these rarely stop with one victim. She told me, her voice calm but commanding, earned through decades chasing white-collar predators. "Your documentation likely prevented dozens of others from being targeted. The community rallied like villagers preparing to face a dragon. Businesses joined forces. Volunteers patrolled job sites in shifts. A crowd-funded legal defense climbed to $150,000. National HOA reform groups stepped in, sensing the precedent this battle could set. Delilah countered with high-priced crisis managers, spinning tales about outsiders destroying community values. She leaned on elderly neighbors, threatening higher fees to bankroll her lawsuits, warning that my park would draw undesirables into their perfect little paradise. But every lie she pushed only made her look worse. She tried environmental scares, property value doomsaying, painting me as the villain. Each desperate move just spotlighted her corruption. The more she fought, the deeper she dug her grave. Meanwhile, my social media supporters ballooned past. 800,000 broadcasting this fight in real time as a war between justice and petty tyranny. Cabin justice trended nationally. People shared their own HOA horror stories, fueling a grassroots movement demanding accountability for suburban dictators. Sarah Martinez's investigative series exposed HOA corruption across Colorado, earning awards. Other reporters picked up the trail nationwide. The ripple effect was extraordinary. By Sunday evening, I stood on the new dock, watching the sunset turn Lake Serenity into liquid gold. The air was rich with sawdust and pine, tinged with the metallic hint of storm clouds. Over distant peaks, my phone buzzed. A text from Agent Foster. Indictment sealed. Arrest Wednesday morning. Front row seats if you want them. After months of harassment and sabotage, Delilah Thornfield was about to face justice in the most public, humiliating way possible. The final showdown was near, and this time, the whole world would watch her. Fall. Wednesday morning carried the sharp edge of justice in the air, but Delilah wasn't about to exit quietly. She staged one last desperate ploy straight out of a soap opera. On Tuesday night, she showed up at my cabin. Driving a modest Honda instead of her usual luxury SUV, her designer clothes were replaced with khakis and a cardigan that practically screamed, "I'm just a normal neighbor." Even her hair looked less aggressively polished. "Marcus," she said, voice dripping with rehearsed humility, "we've both made mistakes. Maybe we can settle this." She set an actual briefcase on my table, as if we were in some 80s corporate thriller, and opened it to reveal neat stacks of hundreds. The musty odor of old cash mingled with the nervous sweat on her brow as she counted out $500,000. "Cash offer," she said, flashing that predatory smile disguised as concern. "No lawyers, no courts. You take this, I walk away, and we pretend this whole thing never happened." I let her run through her whole pitch, recording every word on my phone as she openly implicated herself with bribery so bold it would make a Chicago alderman blush. When I turned her down, the polished mask she wore cracked like cheap paint. "1 million, she whispered, voice trembling. and a written apology in the newspaper. Please, Marcus, I'm begging you. This was the same woman who had spent months sneering at me as people like you, now pleading with the working-class man she'd tried to crush. The irony was sweeter than my grandma's apple pie, but Delilah's desperation only birthed uglier tactics. By Wednesday, my construction site was swarmed with paid protesters, complete with glossy signs demanding, "Stop environmental destruction, protect our mountain wildlife." They weren't locals, they were hired performers from Denver making $200 a day to fake outrage. The show was so bad it deserved an award for worst performance. They chained themselves to equipment with links so flimsy a stubborn chihuahua could have snapped them, shouting about untouched wilderness while standing next to a parking lot. Their protest signs still showed folds from the print shop. The police arrived quickly, clearly more annoyed than impressed. Sheriff Rodriguez took one glance at the spectacle and started checking permits. Half of them didn't even know what. They were protesting and 3 had open warrants from other scams. "Ma'am," the sheriff told their leader, "you're protesting a conservation project. That's like protesting a puppy rescue." But the chaos served Delilah's goal, halting construction and feeding the media negative footage. My social media filled with bot spam, fake death threats, and coordinated attempts to silence me in the days leading up to her arrest. Then vandalism escalated into something close to terrorism. Someone dumped industrial paint across my cabin's restored exterior, thick, toxic orange that required hazmat teams to strip away without ruining the wood beneath. The fumes burned our eyes while crews worked. That crossed a federal line. FBI. Agent Foster showed up with a full forensic unit, treating the cabin like a crime scene. Watching them dust my porch for prints was surreal, like I'd been dropped into a crime drama, except the victim was a fixer-upper worth a quarter. "This kind of escalation usually means someone knows an arrest is coming," Foster said calmly, snapping photos of the damage. Desperate people make reckless moves. The next day, things hit a new low. DEA agents stormed my property in full tactical gear, surrounding my cabin like they were about to invade a small country. An anonymous tip accused me of running a meth lab in the basement under the guise of construction. The absurdity was staggering. They were searching a cabin that had been showcased in countless social media videos, documenting every step of the restoration. After 3 hours, they found nothing but construction tools and my coffee maker, which, while potent, doesn't qualify as narcotics equipment. The tip traced back to a burner phone registered to Delilah's address, yet another federal crime added to her pile. Filing false reports to federal agencies isn't a slap on the wrist, especially when SWAT teams are deployed, but the raid backfired spectacularly. News cameras captured agents apologizing to me, praising my cooperation, and venting their frustration at being sent on a wild goose chase. My calm composure won their respect, while Delilah's wild schemes shredded what little credibility she had left. That night I sat on my dock, watching storm clouds roll over Lake Serenity. The water mirrored their dark weight, the air sharp with the scent of rain and static. Lightning flashed against the peaks while thunder rolled like distant justice. My phone buzzed. "Agent Foster, final confirmation. Arrest tomorrow, 9 a.m. and media invited." She wanted the spotlight. Now she'd have to burn under it. After months of sabotage, threats, and spiraling chaos, justice was finally at hand, served with a side of public disgrace. Friday at 9 sharp, the monthly Whispering Pines HOA meeting turned into the greatest meltdown suburbia had ever seen. Over 300 residents packed the community center, shoulder to shoulder with national reporters and enough cameras to film a blockbuster. Delilah Thornfield sat at the head table, looking every bit the trapped predator. In her designer clothes, her usual mask of poise was crumbling, the cracks visible like aged paint. The air buzzed with nerves, underscored by the faint hum of news vans outside. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying that familiar air of authority she'd wielded like a blade for years. "We're here to address the circus that has invaded our community." She launched into a grand, desperate performance, casting herself as the victim of outside agitators and corrupt press. In her fantasy version of events, I was a criminal mastermind who had bribed the system to destroy her. "This man," she shouted, jabbing a finger at me with theatrical fury, "has ruined our property values, brought chaos to our streets, and turned our neighborhood into a tourist trap. I demand an emergency vote to end this park project and restore order." The room murmured, some nodding in agreement, others visibly unconvinced. Even her allies seemed half-hearted, clapping, like they were stuck at a failing campaign rally. I rose slowly, the squeal of my chair cutting through the noise. Every phone camera in the hall turned to me in perfect unison. "Thank you, Mrs. Thornfield," I said, my voice steady as Lake Serenity on a calm morning. "But before we vote, the community deserves the truth." I opened my laptop. The screen, filled with Harold Whitmore's meticulous timeline, every citation, threat, and illegal act, all backed with timestamps and evidence. The narrative was devastating, revealing a deliberate campaign to drive out property owners. "This isn't about community standards," I continued, switching to the financial documents uncovered by Jerry Kowalski. "This is about a criminal. Plot to steal land worth $10 million. Gasps rippled through the crowd as I revealed the mineral rights, Delilah's secret knowledge, and her family's crushing debt. The slideshow showed foreclosure notices, embezzlement evidence, and the truth about her so-called HOA's complete lack of legal authority. "Mrs. Thornfield has been running an illegal organization for 8 years, I announced, watching. Her face drain of color. "Every fine, every citation, every threat, fraud!" Delilah leapt to her feet, panic overriding strategy. "Lies!" she screamed. "Fabricated evidence! He bribed officials!" And at that exact moment, the community. Center doors burst open like a scene out of an action movie.